Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today. What's up, Baylor family? Welcome into another episode of Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. Today, Grace and I are excited to be joined by Baylor basketball insider and co-owner of Sikkim 365, Ashley Hodge, to talk to all of us about the start of the season for Baylor basketball. And we know that Baylor's coming off a pretty bad loss to Gonzaga, but there's a lot of, I don't want to call silver linings, but a lot of reasons that game went the way it did against number 6 Gonzaga. Obviously, 101-63 was the final score. Now they're preparing for Arkansas, so we're going to talk about the Arkansas game a little bit. 6:30 p.m. Central Time tip-off on ESPNU on Saturday in Dallas. So I don't want to relive this beatdown too much. This is something that doesn't happen a lot with Scott Drew teams. I mean, we haven't seen – I don't even remember the last time that I've ended watching a game and felt like, man, that was that bad. But is there something specific that you can take away from this game, and for better or for worse?
Yeah, I was talking to Jason King about this last night, actually, and we both were actually encouraged by the talent level that Baylor has. I don't think you're going to see too many games where Baylor shoots, 3 for 23? 3 for 23 from the three. So things snowball quickly. When you're not making threes, the other team's making threes. You know, I think we can look at the performance of Norchad Omier and be encouraged that he's exactly what we thought he would be. I think Rob Wright is terrific, shows a lot of promise. I think that's going to pay dividends as the season goes along. Definitely a guy that's one of your top players and, probably the foundation piece for the future as well. I think that we need Langston Love back. Obviously, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of depth, and we're relying on 8 guys, and Langston's one of those 8 guys. So the sooner he gets back and into the rotation, the better. I think the team has a lot of talent. I mean, I think there's going to be growing pains, and I think we knew that. You know, you're putting a lot of new pieces together, but you look at, the pieces. I think they're good pieces, and I think this team can be really good. And I still think they can be good on the defensive end. I just think, as Jay Williams pointed out in the broadcast, they just have to sell out to perimeter ball pressure. The strength of this team is the guards and the quickness of the guards, and that needs to show up on the defensive end as well. So I think, all in all, this can be a really good season and a big opportunity to bounce back against Arkansas Saturday.
So, Ashley, I know coming into this game, you expected Gonzaga to win this game.
Yes.
I know you had talked about it a few times, and obviously the home court arena, which, let's be honest, it was a home court arena, played a part in that. But I felt like the bigger point that you kind of were laying out was the fact that they're so experienced. They bring back so many guys. And truthfully, it looked like it. Like they knew where Baylor was weak, and they just attacked it. What were your kind of thoughts on Baylor trying to adjust to playing against a team that clearly just they know the identity of each other? They know how each other play very well.
Yeah, I think it was a shock to the system. I think, Baylor won 2 scrimmages that they had against Grand Canyon and Texas A&M, teams that we think are going to be top 50 teams this year. So they've already proven they can go toe-to-toe with good teams, I think, even, in the scrimmages. But I think that Gonzaga is a different beast because of the continuity. You had really 3 things against you here. Number one, it's a very experienced team, senior laden, that is probably very close to their peak performance level already because of their experience and their continuity of playing together. Number 2, you're playing a road game. And we've seen this play out the last 2 years. We go to Marquette, we get smacked. We turn around and beat Gonzaga, a few days later. Last year, we get smacked at Michigan, Detroit, definitely a road environment. Turn around, play pretty well against Duke, didn't win the game, but certainly had opportunities to win that game. So I'm expecting a strong bounce back performance. And then the third factor is, you embarrass Gonzaga on the national championship stage, and they gave up a 9-point lead, in South Dakota, and Baylor beats them there. So I think that revenge factor, especially with the coaching staff, was very much at play here, and they certainly got their revenge. I mean, they put a historic beat down. I think they were saying that was the biggest loss for a top 10 matchup, maybe in forever. Might have been the biggest loss ever. But
I mean, almost 40 points. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that you would have expected, in Drew's first year here, not this year with the roster that he has. But it happens. At the 3-point shot. I mean, these kind of blowouts happen in the NBA all the time. Against good teams, and the 3-point shot is just something that it can snowball when you're not making yours and they're making theirs. That those margins can get pretty lopsided quickly.
Yeah, I would say on the 3-point shooting, Nunn, Edgecombe, Wright, they combined for 0 of 10 on the game. So, right. I mean, Roach hit 1 of 4. And with that, I want to ask you about Rob Wright in Roach. And obviously Rob Wright had for his freshman debut, I mean, it's kind of overlooked, but 12 points, 6 assists, 1 turnover, I think it was. You mentioned it to start this off, but I mean, where is his role going to develop throughout this season with Jeremy Roach also being there? And, all the highlights were about Jeremy Roach, right? Like him coming in from Duke, but it seems like Rob Wright's going to be pretty strong this season based on that first game. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, he's played probably the best of anybody in the 2 scrimmages as well. Like he's very poised. He's strong. He's fast. He's got incredible pace to his game. He doesn't get in a hurry. He's just been groomed, to be a point guard all of his life, and he's terrific at it. So I think he's going to be a guy that Baylor's going to play, pretty heavy minutes as the season goes along. I think that hopefully by the end of the season, this will look a little bit more like our national championship team where you had Butler and Mitchell, sharing the point guard duties. I could definitely see that with Roach and Wright. And I think that, Roach, we got to remember, he's coming to a new program. He's been given the keys. He's a great player. There's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. There was for Ray J. Dennis. There was for James Akinjo. Yeah. I mean, it's not like, you're a guy that's his 3rd or 4th year in this system. But I think by, December, he's going to be, really, really looking like a totally different player. And I have a lot of confidence in him. And, when Langston gets back, I think Langston's terrific. And, that's going to add a whole new dimension. He's going to give you that, big, strong physical guard that we're really missing right now. And we really need that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, Ashley, because I think coming into the year, my biggest concern, and I believe most people shared this, was Baylor's ability to guard the paint, particularly guard the rim. And it definitely showed in this game, and Baylor elected to switch everything. Right. And I think that even might be the biggest area they miss Langston, because you're switching Rob Wright, who's 6 foot and a freshman, versus you're switching Langston Love, who's about 6'4" and just has the strength to withstand that. Do you kind of see that as well as maybe an area they can improve just if they are going to switch things?
Oh yeah. I think they'll get it figured out. I mean, this is a terrific coaching staff. And, it is a concern. We need Josh to be somewhat of a threat as a shot blocker. We just need, maybe even just like a Flo Thamba-like presence in there. I think he's more skilled than Flo was, but he's got to play with the effort and the toughness that Flo played with. Norchad can block shots, but we're undersized, but we're quick. And we just have to play to our strengths and try to force the opponents, into uncomfortable situations. I was disappointed in the defense. I mean, Gonzaga's terrific, not taken away from them at all, but too many easy passing lanes, not enough, urgency, hawking the ball. Ryan Nimhard's a seasoned guard. He's great, so it's hard to make him uncomfortable. But I thought we could have made those other guys uncomfortable, and we really didn't. So I'm sure they're working on that hard, and I expect a whole level of defensive effort, new level of defensive effort against Arkansas, much like we saw against Gonzaga. after Marquette, or the defense was horrific against Marquette. And, we turned around and played pretty good defense against Gonzaga a few days later. So I'm expecting that against Arkansas.
Yeah. When you watch Jalen Celestine, obviously 2 of 5, I mean, basically from the 3-point line, he was the guy that made shots, and the only guy. I mean, Roach made 1, but that was the only other one, considering they shot as many as they did. But what else from him are you expecting? I mean, is he a true versatile defender? Can he do everything from, switch, and kind of like what Jalen Bridges did?
Yeah, I think he's a lot like Jalen Bridges. I don't think he's as good of a rebounder as Jalen is. I think he's a better pure shooter. I think he's a good defender like Jalen was, and he doesn't turn the ball over. So those are all great qualities to have, as a forward. And he's experienced, he's mature. He's going to be a huge part of this success of this team. And he gives us some size too. He's got a long wingspan. Yeah. He's, 6'7", 6'8", maybe if you round up a little bit. But, I think that he's going to be a guy they're going to really rely on to play, heavy minutes in a lot of games. And, he's capable. I saw it with my eyes. I think he hit 6 or 7 threes against Grand Canyon and really was the difference in that scrimmage. So he's capable of having some really strong outbursts from a shooting standpoint as well.
So before we move on to Arkansas, I did have to ask you, it's late in the game. Baylor's down by 40 points, and Mark Few decides to bring in his son, Joe Few, and they turn the ball over, and you're just kind of like, oh, Josh O running the fast break. He dishes it off to his left. And then BJ Edgecombe, who had probably what will be his worst game of the season against Gonzaga.
Yeah, hopefully.
Just destroyed this kid at the rim. So I guess my question to that is, where does that rank on your dunks in Baylor history? Like, was this a legendary one for you, or was it just more, it's a blowout, it doesn't really matter? But the Gonzaga fans, I mean, that might have been the quietest, actually the loudest they got all game, because it was just shocking.
That was a dunk that you just don't see very many people make. I mean, I think Quincy Acey was capable of those kinds of spectacular dunks. Deuce Bello maybe, but he didn't put much on paper as far as that in a game. Perry Jones, I know, had a few. Corey Jefferson. Yeah, I mean, there's a few guys that have done some great dunks on people, but that's right up there. Even though you're doing it against a walk on, I think where he took off, how hard he cocked it back, how hard he finished the dunk. I mean, that's we're going to see a lot of that this year.
Yeah,
and it's going to be fun to watch.
The only one that I remember that was relatively close, and I think it was called off, was the Jonathan Motley dunk.
Yeah, against Kansas, which wasn't a charge. Yeah,
it wasn't, but it was like, I never really remembered that from him, except in that moment. Like, I know he wasn't above the rim player, but on that particular play, he did it. And obviously, he's 6'9" versus 6'4". Right? It's a little.
Well, he had a spectacular one against USC in the tournament too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think it was a drive the baseline, reverse dunk on somebody.
Well, and the one last year by Keontae or 2 years ago by Keontae against Kansas.
At Kansas.
Allen Field.
That was good.
Yeah, that was pretty good as well.
Vitals had some really good ones. Yeah. John, Everyday John. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people if you start to think about it, but But Meyer at West Virginia, the West Virginia game. We forgot about that one too.
He had a whole highlight reel of missed dunks though. That was his, that was his thing.
Right.
Before we get into Arkansas, Grayson already said that, but I want to go back to the Celestine deal. Like, is that a deal where when Love comes back, that they could actually have a pretty big lineup with playing maybe Roach and Love, Celestine at the 3, Omier at the 4, and Josh? Is that a possibility that he could go in that route? I mean, it's not the overwhelming size, but it is a much longer lineup.
I don't think you'll see that too much, because then you're talking about leaving VJ, Rob Wright, and Jaden Nunn on the bench when you have that happen. But I mean, it's possible. I mean, there may be some situational.
I just didn't know if Jalen would be a good enough ball handler in that type of lineup.
I think he's a big guard. Yeah, he handles the ball really well. That's another thing we didn't bring that up, but I think he's a little bit better ball handler than Jalen Bridges. I think he and Norchad both are capable of getting the rebound and going. I think they both handle it, really well for their size. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's versatility here. And Jason King and I were talking about that. It's hard to be optimistic after a 38-point blowout loss, but you can see the talent is there. And, I think given the circumstances, it's all's not lost. I mean, we'll see. We got some tests coming up. If you go 2-3 or 3-2, I mean, ideally 4-1, but maybe that would be a stretch against this gauntlet of Arkansas, St. John's, Tennessee or Virginia, and then at UConn. If you go 3-2 or 2-3, you're in great shape. So we got to get a couple wins. It would be nice to start with Arkansas, but this will prepare us for the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that Arkansas game. John Calipari is there now. Obviously, portal was hard. Went after that hard number 16 in the country, Arkansas is. And I don't know what that expectation would have been if he hadn't to come in with the transfer. I don't know what the roster looked like before. But what can you tell us about this team and what Baylor's going to face as compared to Gonzaga, but also compared to what they'll face in the rest of the non-conference and go into league play?
Yeah, they're really talented. But, they're relying on freshmen and underclassmen, as we are with VJ and Rob Wright. I think that their front court is better. They got Big Z, they got Trevon Brazile, they got Jonas Adu. I don't know how effective Adu will be. He only played 7 minutes against Lipscomb. He didn't look very good, turned it over a few times. So I don't know how much he'll play against Baylor, but he's an all SEC player, guy that Baylor really wanted before they got Norchad Omier. I think they got the advantage in the front court. I think we have the advantage in the back court. They're starting a freshman point guard. I'm hopeful that we will, make him way more uncomfortable than we made Ryan Nembhard and really get after him. And, they've got some John L. Davis from Florida Atlantic is a really good player. I'm trying to think. Wagner, DJ Wagner, who transferred from UK. Adu Thero is one of their big pieces in the front court. Really talented, athletic, 6'8" guy. But they're prone to really go through periods where they make mistakes and be inconsistent. They blow out Kansas in an exhibition game, turn around and TCU beats them, and they didn't look great against Lipscomb. I watched that game last night. Lipscomb, was really there. I think they cut it to 4 with like 6 minutes left, and then Arkansas put them away at the end. But I think that Baylor could certainly beat them. I was doing a preview, and most of the prognosticators, like the Ken Palms, and the even Miyakawas and Torviks of the world, are predicting a very narrow Baylor win. So it's kind of interesting, even after the blowout loss, that Baylor still has. They're predicting that win based on just, what the teams do well and what they brought back as far as production, the transfers and so forth. So we'll see. I would hope Langston can play, but I thought he might be playing in the Gonzaga game. So we need to get him back and get him in the rotation as soon as possible.
Arkansas is kind of the complete opposite of Gonzaga, like you mentioned. It's like a lot of new people just kind of thrown together onto this team. So they're probably going to go through some growing pains, kind of like Baylor is going through. Where do you think Baylor's biggest advantage is in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the backcourt. I mean, you got Roach, you got a 5-star VJ Edgecombe, you got Jaden Nunn, Rob Wright, and if Langston Love plays, I mean, you got a lot of veteran mixed with 5-star talent. Arkansas is going to be as talented as anybody, but starting, I mean, Roach versus Fland, I would hope Roach really takes advantage of that matchup. You're talking about a freshman versus a senior. This is where the experience of Jeremy Roach should really come into play, and we should see an advantage there. And I think if Roach really outplays Fland in this game, I think Baylor will win.
Yeah. So do you expect that 3 of 21 from 3 against Gonzaga, from what you have seen, like, do you expect that to not be the case? I mean,
yeah, for sure. I mean, I went to that Michigan State game last year. It's hard to explain. I mean, you watch it on TV, you know what hostile environments are. I mean, all of us have been in Foster, and we've seen good teams get rolled. And I think we're going to see a lot of that going forward where, it doesn't matter if you're a top 5 team, you may lose by 20 to Baylor in Foster. I mean, there's just something about, that sold out environment. Yeah. And when the threes start falling, all of a sudden, what was an 8-point game is now a 17-point game. And, I think that, you may be trying to do too much, rushing the shots a little bit. VJ Edgecombe, perhaps a little bit of nerves in his first collegiate game. So I think at American Airlines Center, you may have more Arkansas fans there, but it's going to be much more of a neutral environment. And I don't think you're going to see those big kill shot runs that Gonzaga, did against Baylor. I think it's more likely to be a back and forth game. And I think, certainly Baylor will shoot a lot better. I expect that.
So Arkansas was also 4 of 19 in their game. And I think going through their roster, I really only feel confident in saying that maybe John L. Davis and Boogie Flan can really shoot the ball. Do they have another guy that you feel like is a really good shooter that can take advantage of Baylor from 3, kind of like we saw with Gonzaga with multiple guys hitting 3-pointers, or is it pretty much those 2 as your biggest?
Big Z. Big Z can hit those threes. I mean,
okay.
I don't know how many he'll take, but he's got a really good looking stroke. And the part of the game I was watching last night, I watched most of it. He made a really, in rhythm, into the shot clock type of 3 that, his stroke just looked pure. He's another guy you have to be concerned about, try to get him uncomfortable. Don't give him clean looks at the basket. But I don't know how well their freshmen shoot it. I don't really know about Knox and Richmond. I don't think they had any threes last night.
Knox was 1 of 3.
Knox was 1 of 3. Okay. Yeah, Flan's, they kept commenting during the game that all of his threes looked good, but they were in and out. He ended up like 1 for 8, I think, from 3. So he's got a good stroke. You got to be concerned about him. And then obviously John L. Davis has made a ton of threes in his career. But those are the 2 guys you got to focus on.
Boogie is the one who torched Kansas, right?
Yeah.
In the scrimmage.
Right.
Ashley has predicted a bounce back victory, and we're going to see that on Saturday. No, just kidding. Ashley, man, really appreciate you hopping on with us today. Hopefully we can do this a few more times. Yeah. Any final thoughts about where Baylor is right now, and then going into the rest of the season? Any ultimate season-long outlooks that you could provide?
Yeah, I obviously did not expect a win against Gonzaga. I certainly did not expect a 38-point loss. Yeah. I thought Baylor would be competitive in that game. But I'm not disheartened. I have a lot of trust in this coaching staff. I think they put together a good roster. The depth is a concern. The 5 position is a concern. I think we need a lot of production out of Josh, and that may be a problem all year long. We may have to play small ball quite a bit if he can't step up and give us the production that we need from that position. But we can. I'm sure this coaching staff will adjust, and I think Norchad Omier is actually kind of a perfect small ball 5. So I know they're going to look at what their strengths are and what they can do best, and I think they'll put us in a great position heading into Big 12 play, which is going to be a miserable gauntlet, but a lot of fun for fans. Probably an ulcer factory for the coaches, but the fans are going to love it. It's going to be a really competitive, fun league this year.
Yeah, a lot of fun games upcoming. Obviously, not a lot of non-conference notable matchups in Foster, but for conference play, it's going to be big. So, all right, Baylor family, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside Baylor Sports. Ashley, thanks again for hopping on with us. Each of you enjoy the game this weekend. Football's off and back in action next weekend at West Virginia. So, have a great weekend and sick 'em Bears.
Sick 'em.